Ladies and gentlemen, I'll call to order the April meeting of the Transport and Infrastructure Committee. Welcome to councillors, IMSB members and the general public. Welcome along today. Just a reminder that this meeting is being webcast, and particularly to the councillors online, please don't use the chat for conversations, and members in the room cannot see your comments. So I'll ask Maya now to just announce those councillors who actually are online.
Morena councillors, we have Councillor Leone, Councillor Stewart and Councillor Fully online.
Okay, thank you for that. So the first item up is apologies. We've received apologies from the Mayor, Wayne Brown, and Councillor Daniel Newman. There are no apologies for lateness or early departure as it stands. Is there any
I'll
more
move those,
apologies?
Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Moved by Councillor Sayers, second by Councillor Simpson. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Item number 2, declaration of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? No. Item number 3, confirmation of minutes should come up onto the screen now. Motion on the screen. I think we have to get someone to move that. Moved by Councillor Simpson, seconded by Councillor Hills. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. We now come to a segment of the agenda that we sometimes have business in, sometimes we don't. Today we do have. It's acknowledgements and tributes, and the first item today indeed is a tribute, and I'll call upon Councillor Filipaina to make clear what the tribute is. Thank you, Councillor Filipaina.
Tēnā koutou katoa, and I just wanted to acknowledge those who are online, but more importantly those who are here. And I'm just going to acknowledge a passing of a colleague from council. I attended her funeral on behalf of Auckland Council. It's Lisa Satene. Now, Lisa Satene, her history with council goes back 30 years. So she's done an amazing contribution within Manukau City Council when I was there as a councillor, but also her contribution to Auckland Council. So with Lisa, she ended up going through, she was at Manurewa Central within our leisure team. Then she went into Clendon, again with leisure, looking at our young community and getting them physically and eating right. It's a shame that I lived in Māngere because I could have helped with that. But with Lisa, she also then became one of the managers in the Manukau City Council, and the managing that she ended up doing was around our art centre. So as you know, just before the amalgamation, she ended up leading the team around the management and also the opening of the Māngere Art Centre, Ngā Tohu o Nuku. And that was the one in 2010 that we actually opened, and one of the first as the new council. So she was crucial in regards to that. She also was part, and for those that go back to the Manukau, was the culture. She led the culture, and it was amazing up until in the Auckland Council days that was no longer supported. She had a battle. It was a long battle, and obviously succumbed to it. And she, in the Auckland Council days, then became employed by Auckland Unlimited, Tatake Auckland Unlimited, before that AT'd, and she was the manager for major events production, and she looked and economic development, looked after the cultural festivals, Tamaki Herenga, Waka Festival, Lantern Festival, Pacifica, Diwali, and she is remembered because when she was battling what she was battling, she still continued to go online and attend the meetings with her staff. So, Chair, thank you so much for allowing me just to pay tribute to Lisa, and I just wanted to see if we could just have a moment's silence for Lisa. Nō rei e te rangatira, haere, haere, haere atu rā. Kia ora. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Filipina, for that a wonderful tribute to Lisa, and I think it's very apt that Auckland Council has a number of long-serving employees have made an excellent contribution not just to the council but to the Auckland region. So it's it's very appropriate that people be acknowledged in that respect. And I guess leading on, Councillor Filipina, I think we have an acknowledgement to follow that tribute, and this is to one of those people who has served this council for a long time, made an outstanding contribution, and today is their last day. So over to you, Councillor Filipina.
Again, and with the indulgence of the community that are here, not in physically but also online, just a few minutes, because when the chair started mentioning the acknowledgement and tribute, I saw Maya look over here. For those that don't know Maya is the young lady on John's right, the chair. This is her last meeting, and she will be leaving council after 17 years. She started off in Waitakere, and from there, all I can say, and I wanted to mention this first off because of the years in Waitakere, I ended up getting a text from the previous Deputy Mayor, and that's Penny Holtz. And I advised her that this was Maya's last day, and she said, please pass on my love and my happy memories of working with her over a long time. She is one of our real Westie stars. Please hug her for me. And so she wanted to pass on her love to you, Maya. Maya, from my perspective, I can tell you that in the 17 years that you have been part of council and at Waitakere first and then into the Auckland Council, your work in regards to the Hearings Committee. Now, I ended up chairing the Hearings Committee for the Unitary Plan. And your work in regards to that, I just want to acknowledge you, Maya, because I know first and foremost is your family. I know that, first and foremost. But then closely second to that is definitely your work. So I wanted to acknowledge you in regards to that firstly, but then also with the hearings that you did with Julie and all the team. I then know that you saw light at the end of the tunnel, and you thought, where else can I improve myself? And you saw Sandra, and then you ended up saying, I've got to go to the governance advisor looking after these committees. And so one of the first committees, and I think it was one of the ones that you loved and for all the work, and that was the Environmental and Community Committee with Penny Holtz as the chair and myself as deputy chair. And then in the last term, 16 to 22, was the PACE Committee. Maya, your work in regards to both those committees is commendable. Why? Because there were a few issues that you were facing from a family perspective, but you ended up still putting 110% in regard into your mahi, into your work. So I thank you over the recent months, Maya, and the recent years. There's again whānau. There's been some issues there, and we know about that, but your dedication, Maya, I just wanted to say on behalf of all of us, thank you so much. I was one of the referees for the job, and she was successful in it. I wanted to lie. I didn't want to tell them the truth, but I did, and she's now heading down to Rotorua. So Maya, on behalf of all of us, a few things. From myself and some of the members here, there's some flowers for you. Just to say thank you. John also heard that you were alcoholic, so he's got 2 bottles of wine in that pink bag for you. And that brown one there, I got that off the store when I got those flowers, and it's a candle, and it's called Black Rose. And the reason it is because the black signifies the fact that we are sad that you're going, and the rose obviously is yourself. So that is why I ended up getting that candle. So by behalf of all of us, thank you for your dedication, but thank you also for putting your family first and the mahi. Ngā mihi ki a koe, and again on behalf of all of us, thank you for your indulgence. Kia ora ngā maia.
Thank you very much, Councillor Filipina, and just to echo your sentiments there of appreciation of this committee for the way Mai has helped us get up and going, and for sort of calm and efficient presence she brings to this meeting. So thank you very much, Mai, and we look forward to just seeing you before you go. So the next item is petitions. We have received no petitions, so we go straight now to public input. And the first member up today is Roger Hawkins. Roger, is Roger here? Hi, Roger. So Roger, as Roger makes his way up to the front desk, he will be talking about Auckland Transport's proposal with respect to Ponsonby Road and Pompalia Terrace with pedestrian improvements. Welcome to the meeting. Roger, you press the talk. There's a talk button that should go on red. You've got 5 minutes for your presentation, Roger, and then some questions from the councillors. So welcome, and your slide should be brought up to aid your presentation.
I'd like to thank you very much, Councillor. I'd like to start by showing this rather obvious slide. The yellow line at the bottom, orange line, is the Consumer Price Index, and the blue line is the rate that rates have increased since 1994 through to 2021. There has to be a sense of reality start to kick in soon, that people simply cannot keep paying. Thank you. Keep paying rates increases at the rate that they are. If central government increased tax each and every year by greater than the rate of inflation, there'd be rioting in the streets. And council doesn't seem to understand that you are getting away from people's ability to pay rates increases. My own rates, being irrelevant in the grand scheme of things, 43% last year. I put in an objection, still haven't had that dealt with, and the last I worked out on the numbers that were provided to me is those rating objections won't be handled until January 2024, which is simply not good enough. It's my argument that, in fact, the rate of inflation is the only criteria that would allow you to increase rates by, if this was a business and it was being run as a business. I think it's important to understand that, in my view, unnecessary spending by Auckland Transport is paying a significant part in the expenses and costs that Aucklanders are now having to pay. And a lot of the work that's being done is simply unnecessary. In my view, it's make work projects being done by council, and that needs to stop sooner rather than later. Ratepayers are simply not a bottomless pit of money. In any normal business, I mean, I've worked in both corporate and small business, and if you don't have money, you don't spend it. You certainly don't borrow to do things that are simply not necessary or not needed. In my view, the Meola Road improvements, in inverted commas, and Great North Road are simply not necessary. Sure, you can put in cycleways and other improvements, in inverted commas, but you shouldn't be doing that at the expense of the free movement of vehicles. Trucks, cars, ambulances, fire engines, and everything else also uses those roads. There's $1 billion so far has been put into cycleways, and to date, not nearly enough people have been moved from cars to cycles to justify any more spending, and certainly couldn't justify the spending that's been been done to date. The raised pedestrian crossings, traffic lights at every pedestrian crossing, which is simply not necessary because cars must stop at a pedestrian crossing anyway, so lights aren't necessary for that. Overheight judder bars, deliberately compressing roads, 30km/h restrictions, and most importantly, why do we need 24-hour bus lanes? Sure, in the peak periods have bus lanes, but Quay Street, Fanshawe Street, all of those areas where there are 24-hour bus lanes are deliberately compressing vehicular traffic into congested roads. Ruining the ability for people in Auckland to get around is not actually making Auckland a better place for its participants. By making cycleways available for cycles and scooters, and I ride a scooter myself, electric scooter, doesn't mean necessarily having to ruin it for cars. The two can work together, but a classic example for me is the bottom of College Road, where on the bus that I came in on this morning, the cycleway runs between the bus and the bus stop. Now, what genius came up with that idea? That is just simply a madness. My argument is that we should be putting the $77 million back into the bank, and that $77 million is what's going to cost for Meola Road and Great North Road to be improved, in inverted commas, when the cycleway down Williamson Avenue is the obvious solution to that. And I think it's important that councillors understand that in order to spend $77 million of ratepayers' money, ratepayers, not residents, ratepayers, have to earn $100 million and pay tax and then pay their rates, and that money should be spent significantly more astutely than it is currently at the moment. Most importantly, the AT's chairperson a while ago admitted to Parliament that they were deliberately trying to force people onto buses by making vehicular transport difficult. I'm going to skip to the research now. This is research that Councillor Darby has quoted live on TV, and what was said was that over 50% of Aucklanders want to use a bike to get to work. Absolutely incorrect. If you look at the statistics carefully, and market research is my background, the question was, would you ride a bike once a week or more if you owned a bike? Now, only 9% of people actually own a bike. So if 50% of those that own a bike were thinking of riding one day a week, that does not constitute the 30% of people that is claimed are currently using or want to use cycles. The statistic number that is being used there is, over the period of 4 years, has dropped to 132 people who were questioned in order to get the assumption that 1 in 3 Aucklanders ride a bike.
Roger, could you start to wind up now?
Yep, I've got one slide that I want to finish with. Ponsonby Pompalia Terrace. This was a 2017 project that was held up because of COVID. The world has changed since then. We simply cannot justify the expense that's being used here to raise pedestrian crossings that are already working perfectly, to deliberately, and this is the part that is beyond comprehension to me, to deliberately compress 4 lanes down to 2. And the 2 lanes that flow into Pompalia Terrace and around the back of Blake Street, 1 lane goes back into town through College Hill and the other lane goes onto the Harbour Bridge. And Auckland Transport, in their infinite wisdom, are trying to force that all into 1 lane, which will force a choke point of significance into that one part of town that simply is not needed, and there is no way that that job can justify the $1.5 million projected to cost. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Roger, for your presentation. Do we have any questions? We have a question, Councillor Dalton.
Thank you, Roger. Okay. Thank you for your presentation. A number of times you mentioned improvements, so you don't believe there are improvements. What is it that you're worried about, or what is it that you don't think are improvements to the roading, put aside the cycling, the roading corridor?
Well, none of them are actually improvements. What they're doing is deliberately compressing roads so that it's difficult for a vehicle to get around. Now, an improvement would be to ensure that cyclists and scooters are safer, and you can do that by putting them onto a footpath with a white line. Most importantly, the improvements that are proposed for Great North Road and Meola Road are going to create massive choke points. And if you look at Great North Road in particular, the traffic that's going to be compressed into one lane is now going to be, if you're trying to turn right into one of the side roads and there's a car coming out of those side roads, you're not going to be able to do that. And there's only one lane out of town other than the bus lane. So if you're trying to turn right and you can't turn right, the traffic behind you is going to back up all the way to Queen Street. Now, that's not an improvement. The road is functioning perfectly well at the moment. I've lived here 43 years. I know that area particularly well. There is no justification for $43 million to destroy the road as opposed to improve it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Finally, Councillor Sayers, quick question.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Roger, my question's just around the first graph you put up and linking rates to CPI.
Yep.
So obviously when a city like Auckland perhaps is undergoing growth or has catch up to do with its infrastructure and there's some capital costs that need to occur there, have you got other models or ways that you might fund that necessary infrastructure? I understand what you said about living within your means, but are you talking about user pay systems or just any other ideas you had around funding for growth?
Well, funding's a function of what needs to happen, and the simple fact is water, we needed to fix the sewage going into the harbour, but a lot of the funding that is being done and a lot of the money that is being wasted, and I mean wasted, through Auckland Transport is on work that simply doesn't need to happen. And if it doesn't need to happen, doesn't need funding, and you can reduce your rates increases to a point where people can actually sustain those. I think one of the critical things is in a small business, if you haven't got the money, you don't spend it, and you don't borrow it either. You only do what's essential. So instead of doing the nice to haves, I think this committee has to start thinking about what we absolutely need. We don't need Ponsonby Road ruined. We don't need Great North Road. We don't need Meola Road done. We need a tunnel under the harbour bridge. Those are the things that should be funded by the essentials out of ratepayers' money.
Okay, thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Thank you very much, Roger, for your presentation. We'll save the thank yous once we've gone right through public input. And Roger's presentation is on Nexus for any of the members that are online.
Do you have a question?
So the next presenter today is Mari J, who's talking to us about a case for congestion charges on Auckland motorways. Welcome, Mari. You have 5 minutes with your group, and then a couple of questions. The bell generally goes about 4:30 to give people a signal, the hint to wind up. It's not always listened to, but we try to keep to the 5 minutes. Okay, welcome, Mari, and over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, councillors. I do just want to make a little mention of my regret to hear that Mayor is leaving today because in trying to get an appointment here, what a lovely, warm and helpful voice at the other end of the phone. So thank you, Mayor. I have a doctorate from the University of Waikato in environmental planning, and I'm a member of Extinction Rebellion, Auckland. And my reason for being a member of Extinction Rebellion is a passionate knowledge, understanding that we are at a critical point in climate. The climate situation really is drastic. Extinction Rebellion, they're rebelling against all the things like car transport, fuel, fossil fuels and so forth, driving us all to extinction. And this morning, I just want to remind councillors of the question of congestion, which you have discussed to death many times. You've had the question of congestion charges 6 or 7 times. My own, as I say, I'm an environmental planner, so I'm not actually a transport planner, but I see in 2016 the Auckland Transport Alignment Project. 2017 first came up the congestion question. Could road pricing improve? I need to be... Sorry, I haven't got this. What do I do with this thing? Can someone help me?
Yeah, perhaps,
Please?
can you do it? Yeah, so Maya will do it for you, Murray, just manually.
Help, help.
He's the last person you'd ask for help.
Okay.
So,
Yes, so 2017, you had a report, the congestion question, could road pricing improve Auckland's traffic? 2020, the congestion question came up with a technical report. I might say that both that exercise, congestion came up as, yes, you definitely can use congestion pricing, and yes, it definitely is effective. There have been cities overseas, London, Stockholm, many others, where they've used congestion pricing for a long time, and it makes the kind of impact that we have here when school's not out. In other words, it reduces traffic about 10 to 15%, and it does make roading much easier. So next came that inquiry into congestion pricing in the House of Representatives. Very, very important, very fine report. I can't recommend enough how it's nice and short, worthwhile reading. It's major recommendations, legislation to allow congestion, implement a congestion pricing scheme in Auckland, undertake broad public engagement to help people understand, and it made the point that that is critical. If you want congestion pricing to work, you absolutely need to make sure people have it on board, know why it's there. And the second point is they need to know that all the revenue from congestion pricing is going into not just roading improvements or car improvements, but bus improvements and cycling improvements. They need to know that the congestion money is going to make it easier for them to get to work by other means. In May 2022, just a year ago, the Radio New Zealand said, government expected to give green light for congestion charges. What happened? Where is it? Why is it a year away and we still haven't heard any more? Instead, what I found in the budget proposal for this year, increase fares by 6.5%, bus fares and ferry. Reduce bus trips, 588 per week. Impacts on train services due to Kiwi Rail, staged back track closures. Well, can you imagine any better way to encourage more cars on the road than make it harder and more expensive to go by bus? Honestly, what a twitty kind of approach to the whole question. Now, one of the big issues of congestion charging that keeps on coming up
Could you just wind up now, Murray, please?
is equity. It doesn't have to be a problem. You can make it so that, for example, cleaners and security guards, etc., come in usually overnight. Well, congestion charges can be time-based. Why? And if it's limited to the city centre, it gets rid of a lot of the congestion without affecting other parts of the city. So I suppose I'd like to wrap up by asking, why doesn't the budget reflect all your expensive, time-consuming expert reports? Where are the equity provisions for South Auckland if you are genuinely concerned about making transport easy for everyone? And where is the leadership for Auckland transport? At the moment, it looks like you are going towards another 2% increase in congestion by next year.
Okay, thank you.
That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Murray. We have a couple of quick questions from Councillor Fletcher and Councillor Darby.
Oh, thank you for your spirited submission to us this morning. As somebody who has advocated the need for congestion charging for some decades now, you touched on, and you ran out of time, why people are opposed to it. Because what I find fascinating is it's not like one of those public transport roading debates where people are really polarised. There's objections across the spectrum, and yet, for all the reasons you've articulated beautifully this morning, there is a very sound case for it. What other observations have you made? You touched on some of the equity issues, but are there any other reasons as a planner that you've identified that have been blockages for advancing this, other than obviously we can't do it without legislation? But, you know, I would really like your commentary.
Yes. The reading I've done about congestion charges, for example, in London, was exactly, there was all sorts of opposition, but once it started and people realised that it does make a difference, currently, okay, so now congestion charging has been going 10 years, and it's businesses, industry and ordinary people are all in support of congestion charges. So it is a thing where council needs to take leadership and explain the situation first.
Thank you for that.
Councillor Darby?
Thanks, Murray. Thanks to the group. Is it Extinction Rebellion's understanding that the bill will be presented to the House in the current session? And do you have knowledge that the bill is totally supported by both Labour, Opposition, National, ACT, Greens? I think maybe Te Pāti Māori might have some concerns, equity concerns, as you have. Is that your understanding of the situation currently? And if that is legislated in this term before the House rises pre-election, are you saying to us today that enabling legislation, I think it's going to be enabling legislation as opposed to a directive of the major cities which are asking for it, is your group's view that we should be proceeding with some greater urgency to begin developing a plan for the implementation of congestion charging, and even more immediately, that is, in our annual budget and our long-term budget, to address transport poverty and equity at the very top of the agenda?
Thank you. I didn't know about the bill, but that's very helpful information. I think congestion charging is something that can't be rushed in. It needs to bring people as much as possible on board and give people the opportunity to find alternatives and suggest alternatives to reducing traffic on the road. So, yes, long term, it needs to be part of the long-term plan, and you need to have a series of, what would you call them, steps towards getting to that point. So it's not something that you just switch on the traffic lights at the moment and start it up.
Thank you very much, Murray. Just before you go, I'll ask our Director, Barry Potter, just to clarify where the council's going with congestion charging this year.
Thank you, Chair. And it's the intention on our work plan to bring this to this committee in the next 2 or 3 months. So it's on our work plan to bring congestion charging here for a discussion and consideration by councillors.
Excellent. Thank you.
Right,
Good
thank
news.
you. Thank you very much, Murray. It's good to see that's put a smile on your face there. That's nice to see. Our final presentation and public input today, I'd like to invite to the table Peter Burke, and Peter will introduce the crew with him. And the topic for presentation today is bike ferries across the harbour, which I imagine there'll be some interest amongst a number of parties that are here today. Okay, welcome, Peter. I'll leave you to do the introductions, and when you're ready. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to introduce George Burke and Stuart Thomas. George will be our spokesman in this presentation.
Morena. Yeah, my name's George. It's an honour to be here in front of everyone. Representing Hauraki Express. We're a family-owned business, established in 2012. We run fishing charters, water taxis, light freight, and we've most recently launched a fuel delivery vessel. So we service the outer Gulf. We hold all our marine operating certificates, including our dock pest-free certificates also. Just a little bit of background on our idea here. It's no secret that the Ministry of Transport has been seeking a means to get cyclists across the Waitemata Harbour. Research suggesting that 1,800 cyclists would cross the harbour on a dedicated service per day. We have developed a concept for transporting these cyclists around and across the Waitemata Harbour. Our overall ferry concept is to use existing infrastructure operating between boat ramps, wharves and jetties where possible, with the goal of connecting cycle lanes and routes around the city, creating higher utilisations of these cycleways. In doing so, we forecast the reduction of 6 million kilometres per year, eliminating emissions from those 6 million kilometres per year. Not to mention, we will be facilitating a healthy lifestyle for 1,800 Aucklanders per day. These bike ferries themselves, they'll be purpose-built. We plan to have 6 of these in operation. They'll be roughly 12 metres long, electrically powered with outboards, with a capacity for 24 cyclists. They'll be built in New Zealand in recyclable aluminium. As you can see, they've got the loading ramp at the bow, and also we've got loading ramps on the side for use at wharves and jetties. So just have a look at this map here. We've got the overlay, the green overlays of all the cycleways. Then you'll see yellow dots and red dots. Those yellow dots are our harbour crossings. The goal is to get people across the harbour as quickly and efficiently as possible. And those red dots are those more long-haul trips. Also mentioning we plan to service Waiheke as well. Those main pickup points around the Auckland will be Bayswater, Birkenhead, Stanley Bay and West Haven. Further out, Hobsonville and Half Moon Bay. We'll come back to this map at the end for any questions. I'll hand it back over to Pete. He'll talk about the numbers.
Right, thanks, George. The basis for our analysis, the cost-benefit analysis, are these key inputs. Waka Kotahi has determined that 1,800 passengers will use a service, cyclists will cross the harbour per day by 2028. We've assumed we plan to have 6 vessels, each with 24 cyclist capacity. We forecast we'll be starting off at 50% occupancy and rising to 70% by 2028 to meet that 1,800 demand. The fares we have used are $5.80 for the short crossings, and that's the current hop fare, which is discounted. $10 for long haul to further out destinations, and $20 to Waiheke. The costs. This is over 4 years, and we've put in bold the key figures. So, in year 1, 2 boats, 384 passengers per day, $1.8 million investment by Hauraki Express, and that grows through the 4 years, and in the 4th year, 6 boats, 1,800 passengers, and a total of $5 million investment by Hauraki Express. The cost benefits, that's cost per benefit, costs versus the benefits. Now, the costs are made up of our operating expenses less the fares we would receive. The fares being based on the current discounted fares, mainly $5.80 per crossing. The public benefits are a combination of savings. First one is the cost to provide road travel in Auckland, and that includes the roads themselves, the infrastructure, the emissions, the parking, etc. The cost of congestion in Auckland, which is really a unique cost for Auckland alone, and the benefits of a healthy and fit Aucklanders, and especially taking pressure off the health system. We've got data from the Ministry of Transport to do these calculations. And you'll see that with 2 boats in year 1, it's actually quite a shortfall of operating costs and fares. It rises up to 3 years, and then it drops away. And beyond 4 years, it actually the public cost, which really is the subsidy arising from the discounted fares, starts to get into positive territory. The public benefits from what I've described before are actually very, very significant. And you see the total over 4 years, $2.65 million of cost or shortfall in income, and public benefits $26.8 million. That's 10 to 1 benefit to cost.
So yes, as a brief summary, Hauraki Express Bike Ferry Plan provides significant public benefits at little public cost. Capital and operating costs are covered by us, Hauraki Express. The public costs are minuscule compared to government's initiatives to establish a dedicated harbour crossing for cyclists. The benefits to public purse far exceed public costs. As Pete said, it's 10 to 1. So we want your full support in this, and we want in this initiative, and we would like to engage with council to make this all happen.
Right, thank you very much for that presentation, of particularly exciting prospect, and well supported by fellow presenters, I see. So we've got a few questions here. Councillor Walker, Councillor Turner and Councillor Hills. Over to you, Councillor Walker.
So I've got 2 questions. The first question is to yourself and Barry, and you can think about that in the meantime, and that's how we can advance this. Okay, so just give some thought to that. The question that I've got for your team is, you can deliver this, I'm assuming. Do you have the crew? That's one question. Is there any infrastructure requirement on council's part? And I think you may have already addressed this. How quickly could you put this in place, given that I think there's a very quick turnaround? You can build the boats yourself. And the other question that you may not have the answer to that, I understand the economics and the benefit cost, but the return on investment in terms of carbon reductions must be absolutely outstanding. So I don't know whether you've given support to that. So a few quick questions, Mr. Chair.
Staff-wise, we've been around for 12 years, so we've got a pretty amazing staff base. We've got skippers, contract skippers that work for us, and they want to work for us full time. So this would be a great opportunity to bring more people in, full-time work. What was the other touchings?
How fast could you get going?
How fast? Maybe Stu could take that one.
Yeah, so we've got a really good relationship with Extreme Boats and their commercial and bigger boat, legacy boats down in Whakatane. And so they're keen to put their hand up as an option to build the boats. We'd be looking to get them underway next year.
Next year?
Yeah.
What, start of the year?
They would be able to get one of those out the door sort of mid next year, I believe. Yeah, they tend to build another shed and get them more staff when they get busy, so they've got a really good team down there.
Got that. So the other question was, no infrastructure requirements on the part of council?
Correct, so it's all around using the existing boat ramps and wharves that are there where necessary.
And the last question around carbon?
Yeah, that's the carbon emissions are included in the benefits. They've been monetised in the calculations. So taking 1,800 people off the road, or who would become motorists or travellers on buses, users of the road, that has been that's included in that total.
Got it. And
Okay, we'll answer a question at the end. Councillor Turner?
Thank you. Sounds like a good idea. I just might want to... it won't work. Oh, it does now. Sounds like a good idea. Just a couple of questions. Propulsion. You talked about electricity, and then you talked about you've got outboards on the back. Is the primary propulsion outboards, or is the primary propulsion electrical?
So these will be electric outboards, which is obviously new technology, and that side of technology is always progressing. So it's it's exciting to see what they're coming out with.
So the other question was, are all your passengers going to have to be accompanied by a bike, or are you going to accommodate people who haven't got bikes? And if so, how are you going to manage that?
Yes, well, we've got obviously e-scooters and other means of transport like that are more than welcome. The priority would be cyclists. If there was someone at the end of the, once we'd loaded everyone on, and if you were about to leave and someone said, "Oh, I missed the ferry," chances are you get them on board. But because we're going to the boat ramps and designated areas, the cyclists will be there, and I think the passengers will go to those ferry wharfs.
And one last question, which just come to mind. So if your propulsion is electric outboards, you've got a bunch of internal operations there that will have standby motors, petrol, diesel-powered generators.
Yeah, you'll have diesel-powered generators just to kick in if needed, but these being short trips, you'll have enough battery to work those day trips back and forth.
I'm talking about the hydraulics, etc. on board.
So hydraulics will be run by another motor.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. And finally, Councillor Hills.
Thank you. This is really exciting. Would be good to just get get it done. I guess two questions. One, have you talked to the Minister, because the Minister has talked to Chris Darby and I around funding this sort of thing post the no access for bikes over the harbour from Waka Kotahi funding?
Yeah. We've approached the Minister twice in his capacity as Minister for Auckland and Minister for Transport, and we haven't had a response.
Okay. The other thing, and I probably would say, just knowing the condition of the coastal assets in the harbour, that there probably would be some infrastructure, so maybe factor that in to that. My other question would be, is this predicated on Auckland Transport funding good cycling connections to these areas? Because, you know, despite what some people think, we're spending less than 1% of our transport budget on cycling and not even completing that. So do your numbers assume that we're actually going to spend some money on safer cycling so people can actually get to these wharves?
No, they don't. Do you want to go to that map? We have the priority destinations or pickup points are on the North Shore, Birkenhead, Bayswater, Stanley Bay, and on the south side, Westhaven and Okahu Bay, although Okahu Bay is more exposed to weather. All of those have existing ramps and jetties, but the ramps are quite adequate for our operation. We don't envisage any work necessary or on the land to be done, and we don't see that there's a need for any resource consents at this stage, although experts might tell us differently, but I don't think there are any consents other than the maritime consents that we normally get anyway.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hills, and thank you, Peter and team, for an excellent presentation. I'm sure if the Mayor was here, that would fit in very well with his concept of doing more with less and trialling things and getting on and giving things a shot. In respect of the question you posed, Councillor Walker, I think you will find the response to that in our recommendations for all the public input. In the first instance, to receive the input from Hauraki Express, and to request that the presentation be referred to Auckland Transport and Waka Kotahi for consideration and report back to this committee. Waka Kotahi and AT representatives are at this meeting, so they've heard the presentation, but we will formally send it through to them for a response. If we could have a mover and a seconder, please, for this one. Moved by Councillor Fletcher, seconder by Councillor Sayers. All those in favour? We'll just move this first. You had about 5 questions. We've done.
I've got a question.
No. No, we're moving it. We're set. Against? And do we have a motion for the other 2 presenters that we had today? Okay, moved by Councillor Lee, seconded by Councillor Fletcher to thank our other presenters. All those in favour? Against? Okay, carried. So thank you very much to everyone who presented in public input today, and Peter and team will get back to you and keep you updated with respect of what comes back from Auckland Transport and Waka Kotahi. Thank you very much. Cheers.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Don't lean on these front panels, guys. It's not a good idea. Yeah. Okay, just while people are filing out and Councillor Henderson is fixing up the council property he's vandalised. You can't let these Westies in anywhere, can you? So item number 6, there is no local input today, local board input today, folk. Item number 7, extraordinary items, none that I'm aware of. which takes us through to the agenda proper. Item 8, we have like to welcome Steve Mutton from Waka Kotahi. Steve has the position of Director of Regional Relationships, and I'm sure most councillors around the table come across Steve in the course of their travels, and certainly I've been seeing a bit of him recently in relation to the Northern Corridor Improvements Project, which is a wonderful project that has just come to completion after being in construction since 2018. So I'll leave Steve to introduce Randia, and we look forward to the presentation from Waka Kotahi today. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you very much, Chair, and once again, thank you for the committee for hosting us this morning. It's always good to come and talk to you all. I'll just introduce to you Randia Kama, who's our Regional Manager of System Design here, and Tameki Makoto and Titai Tokoro. If you remember last time we were here, we talked about the government policy statement and we talked about funding. And we had Nicole Rosie join us, our Chief Executive. What we thought we'd do today is go to the other end of the value chain and talk a little bit about a project that's just been completed to talk to you about some of those benefits that we're recognising from that. So I think one of the key things with the Northern Corridor Improvements Project, which the Chair mentioned was formally opened last Friday, is that it's delivering much more than just transport benefits, but it's actually delivering, you know, real true community and environmental benefits, and I'll touch on some of those today. The government policy statement, which is known as a GPS, now you'll all be interested towards the end of May, there should be a draft of GPS come out for consultation. But it talks about the purpose of the transport system is about improving the well-being of people and also the livability of places. And I think when you look at this particular project, it really aligns to those 5 objectives, which includes inclusive access, it's about health and safety of people, it's about environmental sustainability, it's about resilience and security and economic prosperity. So this is one of the projects that Waka Kotahi have successfully delivered with our partners. You know, it really does meet those 5 outcomes. So this project, NCI, is known as Northern Corridor Improvements, actually kicked off about 6 years ago, and it was to complete the Western Ring Route, which was a 48-kilometre alternative route through Auckland, which went via State Highway 18, State Highway 16 and State Highway 20. Now, the Western Ring Route was upgraded across 2 decades, and for those of you who've been around a little while, it started off with the interchange down at Minako, with that State Highway 21 interchange. We saw State Highway 20 develop. We saw the State Highway 16 causeway get widened and came up higher for climate change reasons. We saw Waterview Tunnel do that critical connection between 20 and 16. We saw Te Atatu and Lincoln Road interchanges get upgraded. State Highway 18 was put in place, and now this is the final piece where we've now got that State Highway 18, State Highway 1 connection. With the project now complete, we have that absolutely alternate route through Auckland from a resilience and security perspective, where the movement of people and goods are in addition to that State Highway 1 and also across the Auckland Harbour Bridge. It also provides additional network capacity, which is absolutely critical for us as Auckland continues to grow. And people have more choices now about how they travel and how they connect to work, to school, and to their homes. They can do that by state highway, by driving, by public transport, by walking, cycling, and using their scooters. So as mentioned, this project took 6 years to complete. There was a pandemic right in the middle of it, which the team did an amazing job to work through. And over the 6 years, the Northern Corridor Improvement Project has delivered completion of the Western Ring Route via that direct connection between 1 and 18, which I talked about. Approximately a 5-kilometre extension of the Northern Busway to Albany, including the Constellation Station upgrade to support the northbound trips. Approximately 10 kilometres of shared paths with local connections along State Highway 1 and State Highway 18. Additional lanes on State Highway 1 between Otia Valley Road and Constellation Drive. Upgrade of State Highway 18 westbound on-ramp and safety improvements along State Highway 18. 3 new community sports facilities, which was the North Harbour BMX, North Harbour Hockey, and the Wainoni Park Pony Club. was upgrade of 3 community spaces, the Rook Reserve, Arranway Reserve and Meadowwood Reserve. And also, those people who travel it, the incredible urban design narrative which reflects the absolute cultural richness of that area. And also a range of environmental benefits, including planting of hundreds of thousands of native plants and upgrades to a lot of the stormwater systems around that to protect the local walkways. So that team has been incredibly busy over the last 6 years. I think some of the additional community and environmental benefits this project has delivered has certainly been enhanced thanks to our partnership with Ngā Mana Whenua o Tamaki. They've been a partnership with us right from the beginning of this project, and they're so important to us in terms of helping us to achieve these great outcomes. And that whole urban design development has enabled that story of the region through design to be told. And it's really important cultural landscape, but also reflects, I think, creates a welcoming, stunning community space for locals and visitors to enjoy. The construction of NCI was delivered through a hybrid alliance model set up with our partners, and it was one of our first of our kind, the hybrid alliance, and it's worked really well right from initial conception and really kept the principles of customers at the heart of decision making throughout, and I think that has resulted in a really good outcome. I think a couple of key things here was around that the 2 direct state highway links and local road upgrades in the immediate area also enabled the team to work really closely with other infrastructure providers such as Vector and Watercare, and we've included upgrades in their infrastructure as well as part of this project. So we're able to do this work a lot more efficiently and effectively working with these key partners. And I think that it's also incredible project, not only for the transport outcomes, but in which the way we've worked with the other infrastructure organisations to ensure that we achieve those great outcomes for Auckland. So as mentioned, keeping our customers at the heart of the project has ensured that we achieve those outcomes. The customer-led construction methodology reduced the impacts, which I'll talk about a little bit more shortly. And also there was a thing within the team said, don't muck with the bus, which absolutely assured that everything they did not impact the public transport schedules and that the bus had priority over all their work and their work methodology. Another benefit was minimising lane shifts and actually keeping speeds at a higher level during construction. And we're actually using that type of methodology in a lot of our other projects on our live motorway networks at the moment, especially down the southern corridor. The Tirahanga Wainui Bridge also provides walking and cycling transport connections for communities both sides of the state highway, and we use that along with the infrastructure that Watercare were delivering for their critical water infrastructure on the North Shore's growing population. We also amended some of our designs to go from a flyover to an underpass to reduce impact on the neighbouring properties. And these benefits have a real positive impact for those who live and travel through the area, in addition to the wider general public who are using this network. The NCI team has worked over 4.5 million people hours. We inducted over 5,000 people into that project, and there's some really big numbers of 13 new bridges, 33,000 cubic metres of concrete, 200,000 metres of squared pavement, all achieving a no lost time injury, which is absolutely fantastic that we kept our people safe while delivering this significant infrastructure. And the lessons from this project, as I said, are being built into all our projects around New Zealand. So just on the last slide here, because we're quite keen to open it up for questions, is that as we celebrate the completion of this particular project, there's still a lot of investment happening on the North Shore, which is over the next few months, we will see the new Puhoi to Walk With project open, so that people and goods travelling between Northland and Auckland can have that, enjoy a safer, more resilient and a more certainty around their journey times. Also, Omaha Penlink will be in full swing in this construction season at the end of the year, and the team's really setting up quickly to be able to expedite that work as quickly as we can. So certainly a lot of projects in the North Shore and north of Auckland, which is really exciting. And of course, as you will all know, we're planning for the Waitemata Harbour Connections project, encouraging you all to have your say, which I'm sure you will, but also that really feeds into the to the connections for the North Shore. So through you, Chair, happy to take any questions.
Thanks very much for the presentation, Steve. We have some questions lined up. Councillor Walker, Darby and Hills.
Just a really quick commendation. Great project, delivered, timing wonderful, and the disruption negligible, so really well done. So quick question, the Rosedale station, when is it going to be delivered and can you deliver it?
Thanks, Councillor, through your chair. The Rosedale station right now, we're working with Auckland Transport on looking at the most effective and efficient way to actually contract the works. It was originally planned to be delivered by the Alliance, but there's some work to be done now to actually look at a more efficient way to deliver the project. I don't actually have a timeline yet for it, but I understand there's some work that's happening to actually try and get the works out to tender. That's the next piece of the puzzle for this particular project to get underway.
Okay, thank you, Randir. Councillor Darby.
Chair, Randir, Steve, thanks very much. Thanks for the account of the Northern Corridor project. And of course, that has a long history. It originally did not include a busway. So I'm just reflecting, and this is just being candid with you, your agency did not propose a busway originally. I wrote to the minister of the time and the new member up there, the national minister and the national member up there, and got very brief replies. It was actually one of your board members who actually proposed the busway go in because it would lower the cost of building the motorway using the busway as a staging area. I'm just accounting that, and then when it came to us later on, we were pushing this committee, the former planning committee was pushing for no big superstructure, and we were told, and I was part of that conversation pushing for it, and we were told not possible, there's a big telecoms cable. The Alliance, once they got on board, suddenly the telecoms cable disappeared as a problem. I guess I'm just giving a brief background here because I give credit to the agency, but I also give credit to the agency being open to the inputs of others eventually, because it's the others who have created a great project here on the back of your work as well. I don't dismiss your work. Which draws me to my key question is 8 years ago, at least, I went down and met a board of then, and they talked about Waka Kotahi's great new plan to reallocate road space on its network. Sounds familiar to you, Steve, I'm sure. So in 8 years, but possibly in more recent years, what has Waka Kotahi done to make their network more efficient and carry a lot more than 1.1 people per vehicle in the AM and PM peak? What have they done, and what are they planning to do to make the motorway network in Auckland become substantially more efficient than 1.1 person occupancy?
Thank you, Councillor, for your question. I'll just talk quickly about, first of all, the partnerships. Waka Kotahi realises that partnerships are absolutely critical to have when we're working in Tamaki Makaurau. This is why we're very connected with Auckland Council, Auckland Transport and yourselves. We pride ourselves on our consultation with the community to make sure that we're building community solutions, that we're not just building a transport network, but understanding how people use it, what the form and function is, and how we can deliver the outcomes that the communities are seeking. So alliancing enables us to do that. We've been very successful with our alliances throughout the country, and we'll continue to use that in a collaborative way, getting good results. We really focus on optimisation, and I'll pass it over to Randir, who can talk a little bit more about that.
Thank you. Look, just before I go into optimisation, Council, there's also some other pieces of kit that we've been building up and down the city where we are putting in some really good cycling connections. An example being the Southern Corridor Initiative, where Like the Northern Corridor, we've actually got a fantastic shared user path that's actually not just connecting different parts of the South Auckland, but also it's connecting into development that's happening. So there's a real opportunity there to actually work collaboratively with developers around how we manage and influence the way people are traveling around by getting connections into those local communities. So we're doing that. The optimization program that Steve talked about is something we're doing jointly with Auckland Transport, and we are identifying parts of our network. Now look, it's a bit challenging, but we're identifying parts of the network where we can actually convert some of our shoulders to bus lanes, for example, and that's work that we're doing in the background as well. So it's work that we are stepping into and moving closer towards as well, because we recognize at Waka Kotahi that mode shift, providing choice to our travellers is really important, and that forms a big part of the work that we do going forward.
Just on that then, Chair, maybe that's for a future attendance of Waka Kotahi to look at that plan, because it is 8 or 9 years ago I've heard a board triumphing this new era of road space reallocation, and we have very little of it from Waka Kotahi, other than a few on-ramps. My last and quick question is Warkworth to Wellsford. We're at a time of really tight budgets now, you know that on your plate as well. Is Waka Kotahi proceeding with a notice of requirement, creating a designation in place already, and acquiring land on that corridor at a time when really those benefits are not as great as the core city benefits from investment in transport in the core of Auckland as opposed to the outskirts? What's the status of that? Are you in the process, is the designation now in place, and are you spending acquiring land?
So I've been working through that process between Warkworth and just north of Wellsford, Tihana. Under the Public Works Act, we are only acquiring property where there's hardship issues, and there's been a number of those where we've had to use that process to purchase that property. We're only following that protocols at the moment. So there's no construction funding, it's purely just a designation project at the moment.
So the designation is in place and you're beginning some acquisition?
When it's required under the Public Works Act for hardship or other reasons.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Councillor Hills.
Kia ora, and thank you, Chair. And yeah, just to add to Councillor Darby's comments on a few of those changes that you guys did, I remember the ramp from the Albany station was supposed to go right across the car park, and we said, well, that would prevent any future development or housing or anything over there. You changed that, and it was a definite no-no that we could go under. It was all going to be a massive flyover, more concrete, more emissions, more unsightly kind of overpowering views for the Unsworth Heights. And so to change, those changes were awesome. I think also you undercooked some of the benefits. That the busway now, that you don't have to get on and off, I think I've been on it a couple of times and I swear it's 10, 15 minutes maybe sometimes when you had to go through several traffic lights. It will bring phenomenal change to that area now that people realise how quick it is. And I think it's helping our bus driver issue too, because the turnover is faster. My question on this fantastic project is, were you able to get AT on board with getting some of the connections into that? So bus and cycling connections, the shared paths are amazing, but they kind of just end in suburbs. And I kind of felt hopeful or fed back 6 years ago that I was hoping AT would feed in. Do you have those kind of discussions? Because it seems like you're doing all this great infrastructure that then joins to nothing.
Through your chair, thank you, Councillor Hills. Look, you raise a really good point. I think that's probably an opportunity for us, maybe a missed one in the early days as well, because we do have conversations with AT. I think we can do better in the space of how we plan for these connections. Going forward, what we are doing is we are developing our 3 and 10-year programs together, and we're identifying these opportunities to, if you like, fill the gap. So I think that's actually an opportunity for us to really get better at that. So for example, Southern Corridor, and also on this particular project as well, there's opportunities for us to try and get better connections. It's sequencing and timing of the investment that's not worked well previously, that we are doing better now in terms of joint planning going forward. So definitely an area for us to continue working in. And I'd just like to also add to your point, and I fully agree about the busway. I use it every day, and it's been a phenomenal improvement in travel times to be able to get from Constellation to Albany completely separated. Yep.
And the last question, thank you, Chair, just where has the Northern Pathway gone? You know, is there any time in the near future that this is going to connect down to Takapuna, Northcote, those sorts of areas? There is a plan, but I think we've been talking about it for over a decade. Is that on the agenda, your agenda?
Look, it's part of the plan. Ultimately, this piece of cycleway will connect on to Akaranga Station as well. So the connection from Constellation to Akaranga is part of our long-term planning. Unfortunately, it is not in our current decade plan as part of ATAP. And again, that's also, we're waiting to see what the outcomes of the Waitemata Harbour Connections project look like as well, because ultimately that's your long-term connections then into the city centre as well. So it's part of the mix, but it's just how we stage it over time as well.
But it was in the plan, so now it's not in the plan? Like it was in the 10-year plan, and now?
Yeah, look, it's not part of the 10-year plan at the moment because of the cycling connection over the harbour that's been paused. What we are doing right now is looking at actually could we start some of the early investigation work towards the latter part of this decade to tie in with the Waitemata Harbour Connections project.
Thanks. Councillor Baker.
Thanks, Chair, and g'day, Steve and Randy. Always good to see you. And it's nice to see my northern colleagues so happy. I think that was a happy Chris. I'm not sure, but I want to pop down to the other end of Auckland and talk about State Highway 22. Between 25 and 30,000 vehicles a day. Last 10 years, close to a dozen fatals and 40 serious injuries, crashes. 2017, there was a plan to it consulted on plan to have huge safety improvements on that road to try and reduce the death and serious injury. That's gone. We've had the roundabout at Glenbrook built, which has been Glenbrook intersection built, which was 20 years in the making. That was when the land was first purchased 20 years ago. And we've had the speed limit drop, but the deaths and serious injuries hasn't. Where are we sitting with Highway 22 in terms of the safety improvements? And how can we get, I guess, Mr. Chair, how can we get because it's lovely to have this is what we've completed and this is the good news story. There's some bad news stories out there too, and how do we interrogate that? And so how do we get that in front of this committee?
Thank you, Councillor. And yes, it is a critical part of the network where sadly too many people are dying from crashes. So State Highway 22, we completed the roundabout, as you say, which has been fantastic for that critical intersection. The project was put on hold for a while. The government had a real focus on speed management, of which we were reviewing a number of corridors around Tamaki Makaurau. You'll know that recently the government has changed their policy slightly on that. So that means that the speed will remain at that posted speed limit. So therefore, we have just got some implementation funding to complete the design on that parts of this corridor down there, especially between Glenbrook, Pairata and Pokakoe. So the team is picking all that work up again to make sure that it's designed to the latest inputs and environment that we have there.
Hey, thanks, Councillor Baker. And finally, Councillor Henderson, and you'll be aware that certainly To and From the West has made a quantum improvement through this project.
Sure has. Sure has. Thanks, Chair. Yeah, a bit sideways on this. I mean, this looks absolutely fantastic. What I'm just querying is, are we planning on getting an update at some point around the Northwestern busway, and particularly turning it from an interim one into an actual permanent one that might be fit for purpose? Thank you.
Through you again, Mr. Chair. Absolutely, Councillor. Look, we've just started some work to do the planning for the long-term rapid transit connections to the Northwest. Recognise how important that is. So, as you rightly pointed, the Northwest bus improvements we're delivering together at Auckland Transport. That's currently underway, close to completion. In parallel, we are thinking about the longer-term rapid transit solution for the Northwest as part of your city solution for rapid transit as well. So, yes, the work's underway. In the planning stages.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, and thank you, Stephen, Randia, for that great presentation. Councillor Walker, I'll ask you to move that we receive this update. Councillor Hills, would you like to second it? And I'll just very quickly just speak to it very quickly, because one of the reasons that that Waka Kotahi are coming to us on a regular basis now is that there are a number of great projects around Auckland, some of which have just finished like this, others which are just starting. And in the general atmosphere of doom and gloom to a certain extent with all the challenges in the transport space, there are some really significant achievements and advancements that are taking place, and this is certainly one of them. And sure, it benefits the people north of the bridge, but it does benefit the wider region, of course, when people are travelling north. And I think it's really important to spell them out, because quite often the project opens up and there's not really a recognition of what's been achieved. So this has been going on since 2018, a little bit like Waterview. There's a raft of really top quality community projects delivered free, essentially. An international hockey centre that does the whole of the region. I mean, that's an amazing facility. BMX track, it's not really a track, it's more like something you'd see out of the Olympics. It's, it's state of art. Equestrian centre out at Greenhithe, similarly advanced, and a whole lot of local reserves renovated along the way. That just came as a consequence of the project. We have the transport benefits, and Councillor Hills referred to the Northern Busway. You hit Albany now, you can be into the middle of the city in 15 minutes. 15 minutes, which is just a remarkable commute straight down that busway. Out west, I said to Councillor Henderson, now anyone going out west, it's a continuous, you don't get caught in any traffic, and completes that ring route, a huge advancement. We've got additional lanes. The other aspect that just opened up, the last one, is this beautiful shared path cycleway along the motorway. That's 10 kilometres, so not quite the northwestern, but a real advancement. And once those connections are brought in, that'll be a huge aid to people going to Constellation and also going to Albany Park and Ride, two of the biggest park and rides in Auckland. I just would finish by saying, in terms of the project management, we often hear a lot of complaints about projects, how they go over time. This was a live motorway network. For 5 years, there were no disruptions. So there was the odd detour at night. So they were working on a live motorway corridor on one of the busiest motorway sections in Auckland, and there was virtually no disruption whatsoever. So at the end of all of that, I really want to give my sincere thanks to Waka Kotahi for this wonderful project that our community should be very grateful for, and we're willing to celebrate, and for the wider Auckland region. So thank you, Steve. Thank you, Randia. And I think I can move the motion by Councillor Walker and Hills now to receive the update. All those in favour? Aye. Against? No. Carried. Auckland Transport section of the presentation today, ladies and gentlemen. This is the first meeting where we have our new Chief Executive, Dean Kimpton, who will be leading the team, also accompanied by Mark Lambert, who, Executive GM Integrated Networks. Welcome, Dean. Welcome to everyone else that's with us today, Jenny, Wayne and Stacey, and I don't know if there's any others, but that's probably enough to start with. So welcome, Dean, back to the scene of your former glories, and this time as Chief Executive of Auckland Transport. So over to you.
Thank you very much, Chair, and it's actually really good to be sitting here. So thank you very much for having me back, everybody, particularly to Wayne, I think, and the board. But I thought I might just give a few comments about my first few weeks on the job, some observations, maybe some reflections, and then we've got a presentation for you. But before I do, I want to acknowledge publicly both the board, but also Mark Lambert and the executive team for the work they've done over a very interesting 12 or so months. There's been a lot going on, a lot of change, and a lot of challenges. So just a few personal highlights. There's a lot of discussion about back to basics for Auckland Transport, and I agree, we have to absolutely do that, but I recognise the tension between back to basics and having a view to the long term. And whatever we do, and we had a reasonable discussion about it yesterday with the Expenditure Committee, my view is that whatever we do now has to be designed to make the boat go faster in the direction, in that strategic direction. So my view is Auckland Transport needs to do both. The other area that we've been putting a lot of focus on is listening to our customers and our community, and I'm really pleased to see that language coming through, even some of the media, your quote, Chair, in the media. But you know, this is a really, really important part of what we're focused on, and I'll talk about that shortly. But my take, we haven't listened as well as what we could have. We need to listen better. That's a focus. Public transport. We came out very early with some of the media I've done and have placed a target for what we want to achieve, and that's to shift from 80 million passengers movements per annum to 100 million. Our target is to get there late this year, early next year, month by month. So when you compare, it'll take longer to get there on an annual basis, but month by month we expect to be at that sort of run rate. The really interesting thing is that customers tell us they love the experience on the bus or on the ferry. What they're deeply frustrated with is getting to the bus or the ferry, okay? And I want to say that we've heard that, we understand that, and that's where we're seriously committed to addressing some of the challenges. And the things that we need to do, and we're aware of that, and I talk about it and I hear you talk about it, we need to look at how we optimise our existing services and assets, okay? But we also need more drivers, bus and ferry drivers. We need to get them trained, we need to get them funded, and we need to get them into our networks. A few areas that, so that's been the first 2 weeks, I guess, those 3 areas of focus. I was reflecting last night what it was like, and I'm having some paint work done on our house. And I call him Pat the Painter because that's his name. Said, how are you going? And I said, well, I'm not sure that I find it stressful, but I don't think my feet have touched the ground. So then, just looking ahead, I want to touch on 4 areas. These aren't the only ones, but these are ones that I want to highlight that I'm thinking a lot about, and we are as an organisation. The first one is the capital program. And ensuring that we not only address the strategic direction that's coming through the Joint Transport Plan work, but we're also mindful that we actually have to land that into a regional land transport plan that is funded, prioritised and sequenced. I was really pleased to hear what Waka Kotahi had to say. We need, that integration is essential, but we need to integrate with the Auckland Light Rails, the additional Waitemata Harbour Crossing and the private sector as well, alongside maintaining the existing quality of our assets and listen to our customers and community around levels of service. That's a big challenge. We need to bring that all together into a funded program. I've got here addressing our commitments to emissions reduction. This is a really significant piece of work. That is why I'm so strong on public transport, recognising too that the use of cars on the roads is a very important part of our economic activity. So it's not about one or the other, it's about making sure we have an awesome choice for public transport. Working with our local boards in partnership with them will be a key area, and ensuring that Auckland Transport organises itself to align with these things that we're really focused on. So lots to do. It'll be very interesting. I look forward to keeping you updated through this committee. So can we just then, on that note, I'd just like to go to the more formal presentation. Am I operating it from here? Thank you, just checking. So you've got a report in front of you. I'm taking it all as read, if I can. That's what we'll cover off. I think we've done the first bullet point. I don't need to talk about that one anymore. There's a couple of highlights in there. There's been a lot of attention put on how we use technology to enhance the performance of our network. You can see that through that third bullet point. We are taking seriously this issue about how we use the public road space for temporary traffic management. We've recently written to the Mayor giving an update on progress on that. And there is good progress. Once again, I thank Waka Kotahi for the work that we are doing with them. We're very joined up on that. Some excellent work by Murray Burt and the team on behalf of Auckland Transport in terms of the way that we have been focusing on recovery from the weather events. We've got some performance metrics here. I'm sure that you've had a chance to read those. I've already referred to the PT satisfaction on the bus and on the ferry. We are working at the dissatisfaction associated with getting to it. And you can see a range of other metrics in there. Chair, I won't pull them out any more than to say I'd like to take them as read. We're tracking this, you'll see this in each report, but you know that already. That brings me rapidly to introducing Mark Lambert, who's going to pick it up from here, aren't you, Mark? Is that right? Yeah. I don't seem to have got the direction on the pointer quite right. Yeah. There we go.
Thanks, Dean. Good morning, councillors, Chair. So the next few slides are just running through an update, as usual, on our public transport performance. So I'll just go through this quickly and raise a few highlights. In the last month, we have been operating at a run rate of around 82 million annualised boardings per annum. Dean mentioned run rates and stretch targets. That is different to what we've actually carried over a 12-month period. So right now we are operating in the last few weeks at the highest level of patronage we have for a number of years, but of course that needs to translate into an annualised figure over time. So we are operating at around 82 million boardings per annum over the last few weeks. The actual boardings over the last 12 months is 67 million, and we're forecasting for this financial year to be around 67 to 68 million, and that's against our current SOI target of around 59 million. So we expect to beat our SOI target for this year. We have an internal stretch target of a run rate of around 85 million boardings per annum at the end of June. We believe we're on track for that. And as Dean's mentioned, we are setting ourselves an internal target, an aspirational target for run rates over month by month of around 100 million for next year, which is similar to how we have managed both the actual and the target forecasts for this year. In terms of some of the detail below that, so the bus driver shortfall is slowly improving. Last month we were at around 363 shortfall. At the moment we're around 357, so a minor improvement. We're about 16% short on the industry requirement for bus drivers, but we are expecting to see quite a big improvement over the next month or two. New Zealand Bus, Waiheke Bus, Pavlovich have all got new drivers in training, and this month Riches are bringing in around 36 new drivers, and they've also got quite a strong overseas pipeline as well over the next 5 to 6 months. Yeah. We do recognise that North Shore has struggled a little bit with the Riches depots, and we're pleased to say that will be a focus for Riches with those new drivers over the next few weeks and months. Ferry services continue to be impacted by the crew shortage, but again we're seeing some progress there. Through the Ministry of Transport, we've got support through a marine industry working group now, which is into its second month, which is helping us at a national level as well with the ferry improvement plan. Immigration settings were improved for ferry skippers on the 11th of April, which now allows Fullers in particular to really progress with overseas recruitment as well, which was a barrier until around April time. End of September is our target for returning bus services back to what we would call a normal reliability level on the back of bus driver availability. And through the two graphs on the left-hand side of the slide, you can see that the red line, which is Auckland, the top graph is the bus recovery rate, i.e. how much patronage are we carrying compared to pre-COVID levels, compared to Christchurch in green and Wellington in blue. You can see that we are starting now to get to the same level of recovery as those cities. And just as importantly, the bus reliability levels at the lower graph on the left, we are now slightly above Christchurch, and Wellington's got delayed figures, but we expect to be equivalent to them as well, and really making improvements in the next few weeks. Just very quickly on the road network and productivity and performance on the road network. So as you'd expect, February road conditions worsened as we approached March Madness and the busiest time of the year for both public transport and road transport performance. For example, during February, during the morning peak, there was a minimal congestion of 69% on the arterial network, which effectively means that 61% reliable travel times were experienced. The measure of congestion we are aiming for is reliable travel times between peak periods and off-peak periods. And during February, which is one of our busiest periods, that was at 61%. The peak average speed across the arterial network reduced from 42.9 kilometres per hour in January down to 38 kilometres per hour in February. Again, recognising that that's one of our busiest times of the year across the transport system. I think I'll now hand over to Steve.